Welcome to the Asset Mindset Podcast. Ruben Ayala, it's great to have you here, brother. I can't wait to talk to you about your mindset and what you've done to help change the world and make it a better place and all the things that you're working on. So thanks for coming and being on the Asset Mindset Podcast. And why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself?
Yeah, Dan, I appreciate you reaching out and having me on the show. You and I go way back, almost 20 years now, which is amazing. You haven't changed much. I have a full gray beard. You don't. I'm jealous. and Denny behind the scenes, we all come from the same group in special forces. So, to me, this is sort of a homecoming anytime we can get together and we can talk. I know it's therapeutic for you. It's therapeutic for me, and us being able to share our journey. So quick background on me, former Army Special Forces officer. Dan and I, we served together in the same company. And, now we're business owners and, we've matured as men. We have families and, we're out here doing the dad life thing now and sharing our experiences.
Oh, fantastic. Great to have you, Ruben. All right. So I'm going to dive right in because, SF guys, we like to do that right away. So What was the single hardest moment in your life where you actually realized you either are going to break down and have to let go, or you got to step it up? And what concepts from the asset mindset change that outcome?
Tough question. Right off the bat, expect nothing less. I got to take it back to day one. I would say my toughest moment was probably when I first came to the United States. I didn't know English. I was in an ESL program and it was a new environment for me. I didn't quite understand the American culture. For those who aren't familiar with me, I was born in Puerto Rico and raised in Puerto Rico. And when my mother and I came to the United States, I was immediately placed in ESL classes with a bunch of, kids that were from Mexico. And we got bullied a lot. And that particular day, we were getting bullied really hard and kids were coming in yelling La Migra. And I didn't know what those things meant. And I was confronted almost daily. And it was at that point that I had to make a decision like, hey, I'm in a new country, learning a new culture, learning a new language, and I got to lock in. It's sink or swim. And without having life skills to be able to counteract that, to me, that was difficult. I always think back about those days. So, yeah.
Now, I love that sink or swim concept. So you realized in your mind, hey, I got to do one or the other, and you decided to swim. So what helped you swim?
What best helped me swim was probably my grandmother. She was a mentor for me early on. My mother and my grandmother and myself, we came to the United States together, and we all were learning English together. And it was her with a constant foot in my ass telling me, hey, I'm in my 60s. You are going to have to live this for the bulk of your life, and you need to figure this out. You can't go back to where we came from. You can't drive, you can't fly a plane, can't drive a boat. So either you figure it out or you don't. And, that was my first shock and awe moment as a young man.
Oh, that's powerful. So even then at a young age, you were realizing the people around you are really important. And
absolutely.
She was able to help mentor you. So what are some of the things that she really instilled upon you that became a foundation for you to grow and establish into the person you are today?
To sum it up, I would say my grandmother really started the foundation of having me examine that you are going to need to assimilate as best as you can to your environment. So us as Green Berets, our operational awareness is our watchword. And that's something that she instilled in me from very early on. We are from a certain environment. We're in a new one. You need to learn the environment that you're in. You don't have to forget where you're from, but you need to learn how to assimilate and learn how to navigate within it. And that was probably her main lesson, given all of her life experiences that at the time I didn't quite understand. I looked at it as nagging, but looking back at it now, I realized that she was mentoring me from early on.
No, that's fantastic to have that support at such a young age. So, with the asset mindset teaches us to turn adversity into an advantage. So, can you share, like you are now, about the time that, hey, that seemed like a disadvantage, and that disadvantage you were able to turn and make it into an asset?
Yeah, something close to home that we can all relate to is, and I'll share a story how I got into SF. That was a major disadvantage. I was not the normal officer that assessed to go to special forces. I went into selection out of year group. I was I was originally commissioned as an infantry officer and then transitioned to signal as part of a branch detail program. I went through the normal pipeline to become a signal officer and ended up at the 1st of the 10th Special Forces Group as the battalion S6. And I hated it. I was a horrible signal officer. I didn't understand the concepts. I did good, but I didn't enjoy it. And I realized at that moment that, again, sink or swim, I had to advocate for myself. I knew that I had a lot of things going for myself. I deployed. I was in great shape, um, tactically proficient. So when the SOCOM commander came for a visit, I took it upon myself to just go to him directly and say, "Hey, we're at war. This is early on in the GWAT. SF needs officers. Put me in, coach. I know I'll be at a risk and a disadvantage, but that is what's going to make me prevail." So by me doing that, it started the chain to say, who is this guy, Ayala? Why is he coming to the SOCOM commander? And, well, let's give him a shot. If he's willing to do that, we'll send him to selection, but he can't fail. He can go to the Q course, but he can't fail. There's no recycles. There's nothing. If he messes up along the way at any point, then, he becomes a promotion risk and he's gone. So for me, that was a moment in time where I knew that my disadvantage of not liking the job came with heavy risk, but, I had confidence in myself to make it happen. I think of those times fondly, and, I remind myself of those periods of time when it gets tough. I look back at that moment in time and say, hey, you went through all that ordeal to get where you are. This is easy.
That's fantastic. That's a great story. And I didn't even know that aspect about you. So I'm even learning something. This is
Yeah, I don't tell people that story too much.
Yeah. But, I say in my book that your mind is your greatest weapon. And it sounds like, your mind in thinking and the decisions you made is something that you were able to overcome and achieve things that you thought maybe you couldn't, or you just realized in your mind, that I have this power. So you had this happen. Do you know when it first happened, or can you describe your mindset shift where you realized your mental toughness or your mindset actually is your greatest weapon or strength?
That, to me, that's a constant conversation I have with myself, believe it or not. Every year that I'm on this earth, I say to myself, man, you really come a long way as I sit back and reflect. But there's always a challenge right around the corner that's going to question everything that I just told myself, right? But I would say when the light bulb first started to come on was probably when I was a sophomore in college. You know, I I'm the product of, I failed the ninth grade. I was a horrible student. I didn't apply myself. I almost failed the eighth grade. I failed the ninth grade. I barely made it out of high school. I joined the army right out of high school to just do something. It was either that or, get in trouble, go to jail, whatever. And when I finally got my stuff together and went to college and I started applying myself and studying, I said, holy shit, man, this is what everybody's been talking about. If you apply yourself, you can kind of do stuff. And that's the first moment. Some people get that at the third grade. I got it as a sophomore in college, man. So I'm a little slow.
Some people never get it, Ruben, and that's why we're here to help them get it if they're an adult listening.
No doubt. No doubt.
you know, because people get stuck, they get
Hmm.
stuck in a victim mentality. And I hate to see that. Our motto, De Oppressor Liber, is to free the oppressed, or to free from oppression. And I think people oppress themselves with their own mind. And all you
Hmm.
listeners out there, like Ruben just said, the struggle is real. He still deals with it. I still deal with it. But it's realizing you are your greatest asset and that you can make changes and you can do it. So can you share a little bit about how to overcome maybe victim mentality? Because your background, you probably felt like a victim at times, or you maybe had excuses because, oh, I had to, English is my second language or whatnot. So can you help other people that maybe feel like they have this chip on their shoulder or this victim mentality? How do they overcome that and get rid of it?
Yeah. And I'll tell you, man, the victim mentality is an easy trap that we can all fall into. I've fallen into it. I fall into it all the time. I think it's just it's human nature, especially when you're at your low. Um, Not to be confused with certain people that are true victims. So I don't want to diminish that either. But for me, reading really unlocked that and tapping into other people's stories, because you can have friends and peers that you can lean on, but make no mistake that if you have friends and peers who haven't been through that journey and overcome their personal obstacles or demons, they're not going to be the best mentors for you. They're going to give you horrible advice. So for me, it was reading biographies, reading the journeys of people that I wanted to be like and emulate, and see what they went through and understand and put myself in their shoes, or empathize with their journey. And there's a million different ways to do that, but reading really unlocked that feature in my mind to say, hey, Ruben, this guy, he was able to overcome this. You can do the same thing. Does that make sense?
No, that makes total sense. And that's where I talk about, surrounding yourself with positive people and positive
Yeah,
environments. You made a shift and your positive environment was getting in that book. And that mentor that you found was that person that autobiography was about,
that's right.
or the story of them overcoming. And I want to agree with you. There are people that are victimized and have horrible things happen to them. But one of the things I've learned through my studies over the years is that once you're a victim, okay, you were a victim, but you don't have to stay a victim, no matter what it is. And you talk to anybody that's recovered from horrific things where they were victimized, they can overcome and realize that they don't want to give that person or that event any more power. They want to move on. Now, it's not always easy by no means for you, me, and even people that have had it worse, but it can be done. And can you talk a little bit about how that changes you when you feel like, you know what? I don't have to stay a victim.
Yeah. Once you unlock that, we just call it a superpower, right? It was a superpower for me to say, to get out of your own head. And when I say that is when you don't have mentorship, when you don't have counsel, whether it be through books, friends, peers, you're your own counsel. And I don't try to be my own counsel, because personally, I'm going to run off the cliff. I'm just being honest. So once you unlock that and say, okay, it's okay for me to look outside of that, it starts giving you options. And when I was in graduate school, I had a professor. He said, whenever you feel like you are at your wit's end at a problem, or you are upset with a person, or something's not going your way, I want you to think of 6 different things of why it's not going your way. And I try to apply that in my decision making process. And that unlocks other possibilities. So back to your point, if you feel so overwhelmed that you take that victim mentality on whatever the case may be, you start to think of, well, maybe it's because of this, 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 this. It opens up a world of possibilities that will allow you to explore other ways to help yourself or help yourself out of a situation that you may be in. So that's just a, TTP for me. And that's something that I do internally.
No, that's fantastic. Can you go a little more in detail? Like, say you wrote these 6 things down, maybe talk about one or two and give an example for the listeners on, like, all right, this happened, or this is one of the reasons why I feel like a victim. Then how
Yeah.
would you tackle or approach that or change that?
Yeah. I'll give a real world example. So, recently, I'm not going to name any names, but, you know, our company was putting on an event, and in my mind, I have certain enablers, people that are supporting such event. And if a certain enabler just drops off, in my mind, I'm thinking, well, they screwed me over, and they screwed me over because of X, Y, and Z. But when I push the pause button on it, the mature Ruben takes over. I got the mature Ruben, I got the immature Ruben on both shoulders. The mature Ruben says, hey, man, let's think of 6 reasons why they might have fallen off. So 1 could be a scheduling conflict. 2, it could be a funding issue. 3, it could be weather related. Who knows? So I start going down the line, and it calms me down. And it puts me in a state to be able to open up the conversation and not burn a relationship. So that's just a practical exercise, just real world example of what I went through just recently to make sure that I maintain those relationships at a tactical level.
Okay. So that helps you prevent yourself from going into the knee jerk reaction or stereotypical reactions that you might have had because of, oh, it's because of this reason or that. So it's getting
Absolutely.
rid of judgments and biases.
Absolutely.
That's cool. No, I like that. And I think anybody listening, I think you might want to try that sometime. If you have this feeling where you're all of a sudden like, you know what, they're doing this to me because of this, I think that's good. Step back, have an objective look at it.
And it's hard to do. It takes a lot of practice. I can't even lie.
Oh yeah. We're all learning and growing. That's the point.
Yeah.
But if you're not growing and learning, then you're dying, as they say. And you don't want to do that. And that's why we're here to talk about a positive mindset and mental health and making changes. So our listeners, because if you're listening, you want to improve, you want to grow, you want a stronger mindset. We're here trying to build the asset mindset up in you, and we're sharing our knowledge because the struggle is real for everybody. You read my book or you read someone else's book about mindset, you don't all of a sudden magically know everything. Then you have to apply it. I can tell you how to ride a bike, but that doesn't mean you can just sit on it and do it. You have to have balance. You have to go through the experience.
That's right.
So many believe success is just a luck or a talent. And I'm sure, people say, oh, you're lucky where you're at now. Can you explain how luck and talent really is not just as easy as some people think it is when you get stuff like the hard work behind the scenes? In a sense, luck favors the prepared mind, or we've talked about, you win the battle before you go to the battlefield. It's in all the PT that you do ahead of time. So can you get into that a little bit?
Yeah. Good question. I think about this often, and I came up with an equation. I'm still developing this theory, but again, just my opinion. I think when it comes to success, for me, the formula is luck plus talent plus timing plus experience. And whenever you take either one of those out of the equation, you may be successful, you may not. And just to briefly explain each, because you highlighted luck and talent. Luck being the right place at the right time. And if you don't have the experience, you may be at the right place in the right time, but not may see the opportunity because you don't have the experience to.
Hmm.
Whereas talent, you can have all the talent in the world. We were just talking about your son. He's playing 4 hours a day on the guitar. And if anybody who's read The Outliers, Malcolm Gladwell, to become an expert, if you're not practicing at a minimum of 2 hours a day, you are not going to be Michael Jordan. You are not going to be Jeff Bezos. You're not going to be, any of these successful guys because you haven't put that work in. So I think luck and talent are a huge part of the equation, but also too is you need that life experience to be able to see those moments, to be able to take advantage of those. But again, to me, those are the things that I found in my journey, because Lord knows, man, I've missed so many opportunities simply because I just wasn't aware or I was in my head.
Yeah,
So
that happens to all of us.
yeah,
So do you think hard work, because you touched on that a little bit, putting the time in,
yeah,
do you think hard work increases luck or increases opportunities? Like the ratio changes the more time you put in?
maybe. And I just say maybe because you can be a completely hard worker, but you may not be putting yourself in the spaces to take advantage of that. Example, you may be a tremendous, let's just use basketball. You may be a tremendous basketball player. You put into work every day in your driveway or at your local gym. But if you aren't taking yourself out of your comfort zone and maybe joining a local league, or maybe your parents aren't putting you in the space to compete with others, you're not going to have the opportunity to have your talent recognized or the luck to be there when a scout is there. So that's why I say maybe. And I think that that's where you need to have mentors to help you along the way to sometimes place you in those places to be recognized.
No, yeah, you're absolutely right. And that's why I talk about the second key is, surrounding yourself with positive people in positive environments. Because
Yeah.
if you're not in the right environment, you're not going to be seen. You already talked about being a musician and playing guitar. If you're playing in your basement and you're not getting out there and joining a band or playing on a stage or being a part of a music festival, yeah, you're never going to get discovered. Nobody's going to come knocking on your door and be like, hey, is there a guitar player here somewhere that can, make a video or join a band? You need to get out there. And this
Mhm.
also falls back on that's why you are your greatest asset, because you have to make changes. You have to do things that are outside your comfort zone. And I love that you brought that up, because I think many of us nowadays, because we're modern people and it's pretty comfortable to be a human being right now.
It very is. Really is.
Like you could sit on the couch and watch Netflix and do whatever. It's something that we've forgotten, and you really get to become the most successful or have the most growth when you get outside of your comfort zone. So what are some things and techniques that you do to make sure you keep pushing and get outside your comfort zone that you can share with the listeners?
Yeah, I think for me, the number one thing that I try to do every day is is be physical. You gotta take care of your mind physically. And I think you hit the nail on the head. Nowadays, it's easy to not be comfortable. I mean, I'm sorry. It's easy to stay comfortable because you have everything around you. But the thing that I do to keep me out of my comfort zone is to work out, because that's where it begins. That's the easiest thing that you can do to just make yourself physically uncomfortable. And it just kind of sets the tone. And you can always refer to that, like, I just got through that workout, writing this 30-minute paper or this blog or doing whatever it is that you have to do to get through your day to pay the bills or take care of the family. It makes it just that much easier. And it's just simple as that. 30 minutes, get a good sweat on, and just be you against yourself.
No, absolutely. And nobody feels worse after working out. You might feel sore, but
That's
mentally you
right.
don't feel worse. Everybody that I know that's ever worked out, they may not want to start the workout, but at the end, they're glad they've done it. I've never met
Yes.
anybody that's like, oh, after I exercised, I feel like, that was a waste of time. Never, ever. So just
Yeah.
getting the momentum and moving is very crucial. And for
Absolutely.
your listeners out there, take some of Ruben's advice and just spend 30 minutes even. It doesn't matter how intense you get. Obviously, the more intense, the better. But not to the point that you tear something. I can speak from experience on that one recently. Don't push too hard. I am
Yep.
getting older. But seriously, I love some of the nuggets you're sharing and your background, because so many people get stuck. And you're a prime example of how you can get yourself unstuck, with mentorship from your grandmother, with the books and knowledge. Knowledge is power. We've all heard that saying.
Mhm.
And I think what you're doing is fantastic. So, can you tell a little bit more about kind of like what your mission is now and your mission statement for yourself in life? Because I think a lot of people, they're droning in life, and when I say droning, that's a military thing. You're just like being a zombie going through life day to day. What is your mission? Because you know what, if you want to feel good in life, you need to build yourself a mission and be working towards something. So what
Yeah.
are you doing, Ruben?
Yeah. I think you and I, Danny, the guys who, we've all served together, or our generation who chose to serve and spent so much time away, that we are just now starting to live our life. That's the kind of the way I see it. And my mission statement is pretty simple. Just boils down to one word. It's just legacy. And at times when I'm in my head, if you will, and have that victim mentality, it's like, man, I feel like sometimes I feel as if my whole adult life was just lost, right? When you sit down and you integrate into civilian space, I equate things to, okay, yeah, 2005, that was this deployment or this deployment, or we were here, we were there. Because I can't relate to a lot of things that my peers who didn't serve. So I feel personally as I'm creating a legacy for the time that I've lost. Right, wrong, or indifferent, it just is what it is. And taking my experiences that I've picked up over the last 30 plus years and being able to impart that with those who may be from the communities that I came from, who didn't have proper mentors or role models to follow. And so anything that we do with Triple Nickel, Black Ops, or any of the properties that we are working with, it's all about that. It's showing others, hey, you can do this too.
Nice.
So
So you're in a mentorship role now. You are
yeah,
helping, shed light on a path that you've, you know, beat down a little bit to make it easier for the next generation.
yeah,
And I think that's so commendable. I mean, people don't realize how much of an effect they can have on others. So, with the work you're doing, and even myself, I've experienced this. You think, oh, I'm just doing this, and, maybe it'll help a couple people. Can you share some of the ways that living your life this way now is changing other lives, or some of the feedback that you've got from people to help encourage others to maybe make a difference? So, what was that like for you, getting feedback from people?
man, it's awesome. There's some days where we early on, we questioned what we were doing, but now we're starting to see the fruits of the labor. I can share a quick vignette. We are developing a pilot program, mentorship program with the Duval County Schools District in Jacksonville, Florida. And for the listeners, I'm based out of San Antonio, Texas. Okay, I've never been to Jacksonville, Florida, and now we have an entire school district that we are going to run this pilot program with. And earlier this year, we went to one of the high schools there in an underserved community, and we were able to share some of our stories and our journeys with these students, over 150 students. And in underserved communities, there's a high mistrust for first responders, military, that type of selfless service. And it's not looked greatly as a career option. So for us to be able to embed ourselves in communities like that, have open dialogue and great feedback, and having kids wanting more, it lets me know that we're on the right track, and that to me, that makes me really proud of what we're doing as a team.
That's fantastic. And for people listening, you hear that you can do things that you never thought you could do. This is a completely different state, school district now that he's involved in. So you don't realize the ripple effect that you can create when you put yourself out there. So putting yourself out there takes ownership. You want to speak a little more about ownership and being able to get things to happen?
Yeah, ownership is everything. If you do not believe, it all starts with you. We talked about it with that. To go back to your book, the asset mindset. You are your greatest advocate, and if you have an idea, but you don't believe in the idea, nobody's going to follow you. So if you believe in you have a compelling vision, and you can create a team and create synergy to go down the same path, you can accomplish anything. And that's literally what we've been doing the last 4 years, is creating a team and a network of individuals who are working together across the country. And now, our first school that recognizes this is there, and it's awesome.
That's fantastic.
Yeah.
So listeners out there, whatever your dream, whatever you're thinking, just know that it can happen. It's going to take some work, and you got to own it. Just like owning a pet, you got to water it and feed it every day. You need to take ownership of that dream or that goal that you have as well.
100%.
Yeah. So let's get into a little bit of seeing problems as opportunities again, because we're talking about ownership. And when you take ownership, you're going to run into obstacles and problems. I really want to make that mindset shift. And that's really important for me to get that through to our listeners, is having the asset mindset. So when you have an obstacle or you have a problem come in, can you help explain how that flipping it into a positive thing or creating an opportunity out of that strife?
Yeah. I like that. I think as creatives, that's where we live. And you have to be somewhat left-brained to identify a problem. And instead of looking at it from a right brain perspective, which is, well, it's a problem and let's try to solve it. Or it's a problem and it's never going to be resolved. And it's not my problem. It is my problem, but I'm just going to, whatever. Yeah. So I like problems. I love problems. I love challenges. And again, I just share real world example with you. A problem that we recently saw, and it's just from our community. I was not satisfied with the lack of stories I saw coming from our community in the special operations side of the house. I want to see more. I wanted to see more diversity throughout special operations. And for me, I thought the problem came from the lack of stories coming from the community, underserved community of those who serve. So instead of just complaining about it, we created a solution that was in keeping with the traditions of Special Operations Command, and created stories through the Black Ops docuseries, and taking ownership of those stories and telling them in a very tactful way not in a victimization type of way. So it's just a very small example of how you can make a difference. If you see something that you feel needs to be seen or heard, you can always take it upon yourself to do that and enlist others to do it with you. And you'll know if it's noble, if others are willing to join your cause in scale. So that's
No,
just a little
absolutely.
tidbit.
No, that's it. That's the asset mindset. When you see something, you don't like it or it's a problem, and then you take it on, well, you're going to grow. You're going to learn. You are going to change your life because of that problem, something that happens. How many people, get in a car wreck and something happens, but then it changes the direction of their life. And now they're at a place where they're like, geez, I wouldn't be this person if that car wreck didn't happen, because I learned to walk again and I realized my strength and my power, or whatever it may be. It doesn't have to be a car accident or whatever obstacle in life, but you learn about yourself. You learn about your mind. You learn, hey, I can look at this differently, or I can take this on and this is going to be growth. And anytime that you're scared or you think there's a problem, realize that's an opportunity to grow. And most people run from problems. But when you have the asset mindset and you charge into that problem, you can overcome and get stronger. So I would like, if you could, to implant what you think in your understanding of the asset mindset. What would be something that you would like listeners to walk away with in a sense, Ruben's asset mindset? Like, what would you share and give? Like, this is the number one thing that I think you should do.
Okay, I'll try.
No, you
There's a
will.
lot.
You will.
Yeah. Yeah. There's a lot floating in this big head of mine. I would say the top things when creating an asset mindset would be, the number one thing is you have to believe in yourself. You have to have confidence, because without that, it's almost like an order of merit list. If you don't have the confidence in what you're doing, everything else is going to falter, because you're going to start having self-doubt, and it's a second, third order effects type of thing. You're creating a house of cards. And in order to build self-confidence, you have to get out there and be uncomfortable. You have to be comfortable being uncomfortable. You have to, because anytime you attack a problem, whether it be something as simple as you have a blown out tire in the highway, it's going to be uncomfortable, and you need the confidence to be able to take your jack and jack up the car, remove the tire, put it back in. So yeah, for all the listeners, I would just say you need to create the space in your mind to be confident in yourself. And that's easier said than done. Sometimes it takes years. Sometimes it may just take a whole day.
And sometimes you might have to redo it and revisit it, but you can do it.
Yeah.
That's the thing. That's one of the things that I'll share too, that I know you're all a part of, is don't have this I can't or I don't know how. Believing in yourself, like Ruben's talking about, is like, all right, I can do this, but how do I do it? Getting that how do I mentality, or I get to learn this now because I don't know something. So having that ability to just shift in your head to be like, all right, how do I make this happen? Instead of, oh, I can't. And having the confidence, yeah, you may not be able to do it as quick or as fast or as good. However, you will get it done. That's the thing people need to realize. You will get it done when you have that how do I, and you have self-confidence. Ruben, that's 100%. Fantastic, man. I love it. I love your story. I love what you're doing. And, I wish you the best as always. And I'm so grateful that you came on here and got to share the asset mindset philosophy with the listeners, and your philosophy and how that relates, and it all comes together, because the truth is the truth, right? Like, you can't beat that. You need to exercise, like you said. That's important. Nobody's going to deny that fact. And everything we're talking about here applies to everybody's life. I'm not special. You're not special, but we are special at the same time. Like, we can apply the asset mindset. You don't need to be special forces to have the asset mindset. But if you want to be special forces, you probably should have the asset mindset, or you won't make it, because you gotta push through, right?
Yeah, definitely need to. It helps.
And I see you're wearing a very unique shirt. Can you talk about that shirt a little bit and who is on there? I believe his name is Roy, correct?
Yeah, let me see if I can. There we go. Can you see it okay there? There we go. Yeah, so the shirt is a collaboration with the Roy Benavides family. And for those who don't know who Roy Benavides is, he was a master sergeant in Special Forces, Congressional Medal of Honor recipient, who received the award in 1981 for actions in Vietnam. And we consider him the real life Rambo. If you are not familiar with his story or with his actions, please check it out. But his family still resides in Cuero, Texas, where he retired. And his siblings, their main mission set is to keep his legacy alive. And it's incredible to me how many people who don't know who Roy Benavides is. And the reception that we've had once we launched this collaboration with the family has been great. Actually, I'll be going down there in a couple of weeks. So to interact with the students at the high school, where he has a memorial scholarship in his name. So the proceeds from the sale of this shirt, part of them go to fund the Roy Benavides Memorial Scholarship. I'll be there for the senior class, and we're going to be giving out some scholarships, which is awesome. And again, it just back to the question of how are we impacting people? That's one part of it there. I live in San Antonio, never been to Cuero, Texas. I'll be going there in a couple of weeks, handing out scholarships purely through something that my business partners and I created. Never in a million years would I have thought that I'd be working on behalf of Roy Benavides' family and being part of his legacy. It's great, man. It makes me happy.
No, that's a great story. And that's why I wanted you to share it. And I wanted our listeners to hear it, because you're once again proving that you can make a difference. You can have an idea in your head and you can apply that. And it might be hard to do, but if you do it and figure out the how to, you're going to change lives. That's what you're doing. So for any of you listeners out there that want to know more, you can check out triplenickel.com, and please, check out the assetmindset.com. And you are your greatest asset. You can change your life. You can change the world. You are a creator. Own your power.